Okay, good evening. Um, so for those of you who have already watched the syllabus video, I apologize for the audio issue. I think it was simply a matter of user error and I forgot to hit the unmute button because it doesn't automatically like unmute you whenever you're logging in. I should probably do something about the settings for that to avoid like any future embarrassment. So just if you haven't watched it, skip to like minute 1. That's when the audio starts. Thank goodness I apparently like hit the unmute button, or I would have been talking to a screen for almost 3 hours with no audio, which like gives me so much anxiety to even like think that that might have happened. So I'm glad that that hasn't happened, that it was just a minute, but whew, that could have been bad. So, okay. So this next video is about the discussion board assignment, project, essay, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to do some screenshot, like some screen shares, so that way you guys can see what I'm talking about for this particular assignment. If I can find where I had it. Oh, here we go. All right, give me just a second to get it all set up for you guys. Okay. So let's see. You guys should be able to see my like Zoom screen. So here is the discussion board research assignment project. I can't decide on a good name for it. I'm gonna have to play around with it because it's very wordy. Okay, give me just a second. I need to do something about the way I'm seeing everything. Hold on just a second. Okay. All right, that's better. Okay, so for this assignment, it's going to be like across the 8-week time frame that we are meeting this semester. So, so you have plenty of time to do it. Like you're not going to be like rushed into doing this like all in 1 week or anything, which is helpful, right? So, so let me go over the details that I have typed up first, and then I'll try and like flesh it out for anybody who may like be confused by kind of what we're doing. So, so I'm going based on Florida because that's where the college is. That's where I am. That's where I'm assuming most of you guys live. If you don't live in Florida, please feel free to let me know so I can help kind of like get you to navigate through this process for the purposes of this assignment. If you do live in Florida, that makes it hopefully a little less confusing. So midterm elections are elections that occur when the president is not on the ballot. So elections are even numbered years, unless it's like a city election, then that might fall in an odd year. But state and federal elections are every 2 years in even numbers. So 2 years ago in 2020, we had the presidential election. So now 2 years later in 2022, we have what's called the midterm election. So like halfway to the next presidential election. So several things are going to be on the ballot in August and then again in November. Things like governor, that's like the first one that pops into my head, but there are others as well. We'll go into that shortly. So the first one is what we call a primary election. Florida is a closed primary state. Now, normally we wouldn't be talking about this until later on in the semester, but for purposes of you guys understanding this assignment, I need to go over it now. So a closed primary means that only the people registered of that particular party can vote for those candidates. So when Democrats go to the polls, they get a ballot with only Democrat candidates on it. When Republicans go to the polls, they get only Republican candidates. If there are any other people on the ballot, like Green Party, for example, then they would only get that ballot. Now, a lot of people like the closed primary. A lot of people don't like the closed primary. Parties like it because it lessens the likelihood of people who are not in their party narrowing down their choices for who runs in the general election, which is what the primary is. It's basically, say you've got 5 Republicans running, it's to narrow it down to one Republican to say to your county or your state, this is our guy or our gal. This is who we as the Republican Party say we want to run for this race. And then in the general election, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, no party, it doesn't matter. Everybody has just that one person on their ballot. And then the Democrats do the exact same thing. And then it's the 2 of them. And then if there's anybody else, say there's somebody who ran as like no party affiliation, or they ran as Green Party and there was nobody else in the Green Party, they automatically get put on the ballot for the general election because they had no opposition from within their own party in the primary election. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you guys. So what we do is, in the primary, the parties, Democrats vote for their people, Republicans vote for their people. And it's usually mostly them because there aren't as many people in the third parties, like the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, those sort of things, and people as no party affiliation. There just aren't as many of those people who run. So that's why I'm mainly using Democrat and Republican. Not that there can't be, but generally that's just not what we see. Like, we mostly have a 2-party system in the US. So once those parties narrow down, if they've got 2 candidates, 3 candidates, 4 candidates, whatever, however many candidates they have, they narrow it down to one candidate and say, this is our person. Then the final people get on the ballot, and then everybody votes for who will become their elected official, right? So that's a closed primary state. So I chose the primary instead of the general because we don't know who's going to be on the ballot for the general election because we haven't had the primary yet. And the primary is right after our semester ends. So it's very timely. So there's several things that you're going to do to get to a point where you can do this assignment. So first assumption is that you're registered to vote. If you're registered to vote, you need to make sure that your registration is active. If you don't vote for 2 general election cycles, you go into an inactive state because you haven't voted in a while. And then like another 2 and you're removed from the voter rolls and you have to re-register. So say you registered to vote when you're 18 or when you got your driver's license or whatever, and then you never voted and you're like 30, you're not going to be on the voter rolls. You're going to have to re-register to vote. So that's why I want everybody to look up their stuff to make sure they're active and that everything is current. So there's a couple different ways to do that. So the first option I gave you guys is to go to the Florida Division of Elections Voter Information Lookup System to check your information, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, I live in Bay County, Florida, so my registration's there. Okay, but you used to live in Leon County and you were registered there. Are you sure you changed your address? I don't know if I changed my address. So, or you lived in Miami-Dade and then you moved up here, and did you move your registration over? When was the last time you voted? Oh, it's been a little bit. Okay, well, we need to see where you're registered at and if your information is current before we do anything else. So that's why I'm sending you guys to the statewide database to do that, because if you just go to Bay County, it's not going to like pull you up if you're registered in Miami-Dade or Duval or whatever, right? So the Florida one will pull you up across the board. So I've already got that pulled up here. So when you click on this link, Florida Division of Elections Voter Information Lookup, and then you go here, let me make sure that it's showing up correctly, guys. What happened? Okay. Sorry, let me make sure that it's sharing right, because I don't know if it shares like, okay, it is like, I think, let me just double check. When it goes from like screen to screen in the internet, like on a website, I'm just not sure if it shows as I click through different things. So just to be sure, I did a reshare. So, okay. So you come to the Florida Department of State, like the Division of Elections, and you enter your information. So, trying to think. Okay, I know somebody who may or may not be registered to vote, and I know her information. Like, well, I shouldn't do that because it's her personal information. I want to give you guys an example without like giving away personal information of somebody that I don't know if they'd be okay with. Okay, I know somebody who like wouldn't care. All right, so I don't want to show you mine because I want to stay like impartial for you guys. So okay, so you put in your information, right? And then you submit, and then you double check that your information's right. So like if the name is correct and the address is correct, and it'll see here, it shows that you're active. So that means that you have registered or you voted recently, or you've done something with your voter registration record, like update your address or whatever. Like that all keeps you in an active status, changing your name, updating your signature, voting, all of those things keep you active. So this shows that this person is active and that they are eligible to vote. Okay. Now, say I had put that person's name into the database and they didn't pull up, or they pulled up but the address was wrong. So then you need to update your information with your supervisor of elections. All right. So let's pretend that that was the case. So you see here at the bottom, it says access ballot and precinct information available through your county supervisor of elections website. So I clicked on that link, and this is the next part that pulls up that I was talking about in the description of your assignment. Okay, so you, for example purposes, we're going to say that we live in Bay County, Florida. So you click on Bay County, Florida, and what pulls up is this screen here. So this is for Bay County, Florida. This is my old boss. This is Mark Anderson, supervisor of elections. He's been doing this, I think this is his 20th year as the supervisor of elections. The previous supervisor retired, and then he ran in the open seat that was available, and got elected, and has had some opposition over the years, but has always been reelected. So this is what comes up if you're looking for Bay County, Florida. And then you put your same information in here, which I'm not going to do because it goes into a lot more detail. But so when you put in the person's information and you hit submit, if that person is active, what'll come up is the same basics that showed up on the state level, but then it'll also show where their polling place is. It'll show what elections that they're eligible for. It'll show if they've already requested to get a ballot through the mail, or it'll give the option to request that if you haven't done so. Like I usually get a vote by mail ballot because I'm either working on a campaign. I used to work at the elections office, and so it was really crazy and hard to like get to a poll or to take time to do the early voting, even though it was in the office. Or I'm teaching a class. So like, for example, I mentioned in the course introduction video that I'm working the polls this year, and I can work like early voting and stuff for the primary, but I can't work the primary election on election day because it's the first day of the fall semester and I have a class on that night. So because I can't work like a partial day, they need you for like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on election day. Like I'm stuck because I would be like, almost half of the class would be done. And you have to do first class because I got to do attendance and submit like people and make sure drop ad does and all of that. But like the general election is in November, which is in the same semester. And for that, like I can do like an alternate, like, okay, for this class, I'm just going to put up a video and you guys like watch the video because I'm going to work the polls. Right. So, so anyway, so I usually get like the vote by mail ballot because I'm usually like tied up, but you can also vote early. You can do early voting before an election. You can vote on election day at your precinct. There are several options, which we'll talk about like in more detail as the class continues on. So say you put this in here, all your information's correct, your address is correct, you're good to go. Like that's great. And it'll tell you where you go to vote. Now, if it's not, so say you put your information in the state database and oops, I haven't updated my information from Miami-Dade. You can update it, but you have to make sure to get it in as soon as possible because it takes a little time for them to like get you moved over. So So the way you do that is through the voter registration form, which I'll go over in a second. Another option that could come up is you put your information in and you're not found, or it shows that you're inactive or whatever. So you've got to update your information. You can also do that through the voter registration form. If you're not found at all, anywhere in the state database, you're not registered to vote. For men, that's usually pretty clear cut. For women, you might be registered to vote, but you might be putting in the wrong name. If you've gotten married or divorced, or you've changed your name somehow, then okay, maybe I didn't update it. Like I got married, but maybe I didn't change my name on my voter registration because I didn't think about it. So let me put in my maiden name. Or I got divorced, but I don't think I've updated it. Let me put the other options that it could be. So keep that in mind. And it's not just like married or divorced, and it's not really specifically women. That just happens more often than not. I mean, men can change their names as well, so that can happen. There's also people who change their gender identification, and a lot of times they change their name along with that. So those are things to think about. Like if you are in any of those sort of situations where your name may be different than, say, the last time that you did anything with your voter registration, that might be why it's not coming up as you're thinking about how you're putting it in. So use different combinations if your name might be different. Like say when I got married, so my maiden name is Nixon. When I got married, because I got married older, I was already in my 30s. I was already established, like work-wise, and all my college degrees had Nixon on it. So I didn't want to just drop Nixon. So I added my married name to Mabry, and I just like put a space between it. So, and that's something to think about too. Say you have two last names and you put a hyphen or a space, make sure that you're typing it in correctly as to how you would have done it in your registration. And if it's wrong and you're like, I know that's how I registered, put it in the wrong way. Like half the time I have to have people correct it and take out the hyphen because people want to put a hyphen in it. And sometimes you have a hyphen and they just put a space because they want to put a space in it. Moral of the story, don't have two last names if you can help it. Because it ends up just being a mess. So so make sure that you're like checking all your options before you just assume you're not registered to vote. Okay, so once you've done that and you've checked your status and you know if you're good or if you're not, so let's assume you need to update something. So to do that, you have to do it by the Florida voter registration form, which looks like this. So let me zoom in for you guys so you can really see it. Now, this looks like a lot of wordiness. Like, don't let it overwhelm you. It's just talking about how you can register, deadline to register, that kind of thing. So you can fill this form out and mail it in. I believe you can even do it through like an online submission now. You can drop it off at the elections office. You can drop it off at like a public library, any place that serves people with disabilities, recruiter offices, because they all collect them and turn them in. The easiest thing is to take it right to the supervisor of elections, because you don't have to worry about, well, how long is it before they submit these voter registration forms. Every state is different, but Florida's requirement to register to vote has a deadline. So there are some people where you can register to vote, or some states where you could register to vote and vote on the same day as the election. Florida's not like that. It has a 29-day prior to the election deadline. So you have to register to vote 29 days before to be able to. Now, say you're in the state database, but you're in another county, that's just an address change. So that doesn't apply. This is like brand new registration, or you got kicked out because you never voted and you're re-registering. That has to be 29 days before. Name change doesn't have to be that way either. That you can do like at the polling place and to make sure it matches your ID or whatever. The only other stipulation is for a primary election. If you want to change your political party, if you're political party A and you want to be political party B to vote in their political primary, then you have to change your party 29 days before the election as well. So those are caveats for you to keep in mind should that impact you in the future. So Florida requires either a state issued ID or a driver's license. and the last 4 digits of your social on this form. If you don't have any of those, you mark none. But very few people qualify for that. The only time I've seen people qualify for none is people who were like in their 90s at the time and they were never issued a social security number, which happened once upon a time, but that's not really the case anymore. I mean, like they issue a social security card in the hospital for your kid. Like before you ever leave, like you've got an application submitted and can go and get the card like literally that day. Like my husband like left from the hospital, went and got the paper, like took the paperwork down and had the social for our daughter like the same day. It was insane. So but at one time that was the case. So so that's important. And if you leave those things blank, your registration will be denied or be left incomplete until you provide that information to the registrar. So that's important to be aware of as well. So, and then this goes into more detail of that. So, and then this part here under political party talks about what I already talked about in the primary election. You don't have to choose a political party on your registration, but it will lessen what you're able to vote for in our primary system, not in the general. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be yawning. So, and here are some requirements you have to be able to register to vote. So you have to be a US citizen, a legal resident of Florida to be able to register in Florida, at least 18 to vote, but you can pre-register at 16 or 17. And then on your 18th birthday, you will get mailed a voter registration card. If you turn 18 on election day, you can vote. If you turn 18 the day after election day, you got to wait till the next election. And a legal resident of the county in which you're trying to register for. This one trips people up because say you own property here and you own property in the villages, you know, down South Florida. You can only be registered in one county, which frustrates people because they're like, well, like those laws affect like my property ownership, like property taxes and stuff, or say you own a house in one state and in another state. Doesn't matter. Wherever you claim homestead exemption is the address you use to register to vote. And if you were caught being registered in more than one place, like intentionally, like another state to vote, it's illegal, it's a federal crime, and they will go after you. So it's just not worth it. Like donate to candidates who you like their policies if you want to like have inroads in how your property is being handled. And you can't be a convicted felon or deemed mentally incapacitated by a court of law. If you've been convicted of a felony, but you've had your rights restored, then you can register to vote. So, and then like lying on your form is a 3rd-degree felony, like intentional, like trying to cheat the system. Okay, so that's what the first half of the voter registration application says. So here's the part that you actually complete. So so you can mark, okay, this is a new registration, which would be the case if you got removed from the system altogether or if you were brand new registration. And you mark this if you're just updating your information, and then this if you've lost your voter ID card. It's not needed to vote, but a lot of people like to have it so they know where their polling places and stuff. These little boxes are not even required because they're going to go through all the lines that you fill out to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Because sometimes people will put like, oh, I'm just changing my address, but then they mark a new political party too, right? So like, or I'm just needing an ID replacement, and then it turns out like actually a lot of your information's changed. So the questions that have black next to them are what's required for it to be a complete form. So 1 through 7 and number 12, that's all that's actually required, but we're going to go through it line by line anyways. So question 1, are you a citizen of the US? If you're not, you can hit no, but you're not going to get registered. So yes, if you are. I affirm I'm not a convicted felon, or if I have my rights related to voting have been restored. Check. I affirm that I have not been adjudicated mentally incapacitated with respect to voting, or if I have, my competency has been restored. That's not like your cousin Vinny says that you're nuts. That's a judge says you are not mentally capable of making sound decisions and your rights have been taken away. most people who have had that situation are not filling these forms out, right? So, but anyways, so you affirm that that's true. You put your date of birth, month, date, year, right? That's easy. Put your Florida driver's license or Florida ID number. Put your last four of your social. If you got neither, check it, but that's probably not going to apply to any of you guys. Put your last name, your first name, your middle name, and if you're like a multiple. So, like my husband's a fourth, which borderlines on child abuse. Sorry. Like, I tell my mother-in-law all the time, like it ends with him. If we have a son, I'll name him Billy Bob before we do a fifth. Like that's just too much. And my father-in-law, who's the third, completely and wholeheartedly agrees. So my husband was a surprise and they didn't have any names lined up. So they just reused and recycled, which that's fine if that's for some people, but it's a lot, right? So so if you're like a junior or say like you have a child, like and you name them like the second, then that automatically makes you the first or senior or whatever. So whatever the case might be, you put that here. That's not like a spot for like I'm a doctor, so I like MD, like it's just for like if you're named after somebody legally. So so you put your last name, your first name, your middle name, or middle initial. You don't have to put like your full like middle name, like not everybody does. And so like for example, when I changed my name when I got married, so it was like Nixon Lisa A, right? So then like I had a name change, so I put Nixon Mabry Lisa A, and then down here under line 10 I put former name Lisa Nixon. So that way they're not just searching Nixon Mabry, oh can't find her, she's a new registration, because then that would be a nightmare to get them to like fix it. It's a pain, speaking from experience of seeing people who have done that. So even though number 10 is not a requirement, if you're one of those people who falls in that category, or like, hey, I was Jane Smith and now I'm John Smith, like you need to make sure that you mark former name. Otherwise, they're probably not going to catch that you already in the system. So that's where some of these others come into play to help them update your record accurately, so you're not getting gypped and getting an accidental new voter registration. Because they're supposed to like just update the existing record and not create a new record if there's an existing record in place. And then you list your residence address here. So don't put like if you have a PO box, you can't live inside your PO box. So you're not Mighty Mouse, right? So you want to put your physical address, 123 Sycamore Lane, right? And then if you have a mailing address that's different, you get all your mail at your business, you have a PO box, all your mail goes to your mom's house because you don't trust your neighbors not go through your stuff, whatever the situation is, right? Then you put your mailing address here, because otherwise the stuff is going to get kicked back. So if you don't get any mail at your residence address, like my in-laws are that way, they don't get anything at their home, they have a PO box. So if they forget to put their PO box down, then it's going to get sent back as undeliverable, which starts you on the process to becoming inactive, because the voter registration office can't get you the information that you need, your voter information card. So make sure you don't forget that. And that's for like any form, like not just voter registration, but if you have a different mailing address from your physical, don't forget to give it to people. So former name if necessary. You don't have to list this if you don't want to. It's totally up to you. You don't have to list your state of country or birth. That's up to you again. Phone number. I will say, so Florida is a very open state when it comes to public records. A lot of states are not, like they hold things very close to the vest, but Florida is pretty open about stuff. And so candidates and elected officials who want to reach out to voters to either vote for them, or they need donations or whatever, right? Like if they're trying to solicit the voter to be on their side for anything, they can go to the supervisor of elections office and ask for everybody in their area. Like for a primary, for example, if a Democrat's running for, I don't know, mosquito control, which is actually a thing we vote for in Bay County on the beach. Bless their heart. So say you're a Democrat, you're running for mosquito control, and you want to target people who generally vote in the primary, specifically in the Democrat primary. So you're going to ask for the active registered Democrats within Bay County who have voted in like the last couple of elections, because you know that they're active, that they're like really paying attention to the process, and they will give you a file, like an electronic file, where it's got like their name, their address, their phone number if it's on file, you know, their email address if they've put that on file for anything. And then that way they can reach out to them and contact them. They can phone bank and say, hey, we need volunteers. Hey, we'd love to have your support, whatever. And the same is true, obviously, like if it's a Republican or whatever. So keep in mind that this is all public record. So if you put your phone number, don't be surprised that candidates and elected officials get it. You will get a phone call. So I always give that as a caveat. Like my phone number's on there because I will take the time to answer the surveys, because I know that it's helpful to the campaigns, like one way or the other. Like for me, I want them to hear what a voter has to say. So I don't mind the phone calls, but you know, a lot of people hate that. So and then you can have your sample ballot emailed to you. If not, they will mail it to you. So you can like check this and say yes and put your email address. But again, be prepared to get emails from people other than the elections office should you choose to provide it. Like I provide mine because again, I want that information, but not everybody's that way. So under party affiliation, you'll notice it is not required. Again, like I mentioned before, you do not have to choose a political party. So so it lists the majority parties: Florida Democratic Party, Republican Party of Florida, no party affiliation. Say you want to be part of the Green Party of Florida, you would check minor party and put Green Party. A lot of people will select this and say independent party. That's not a thing. Like that's not a party in Florida. And so they end up with no party affiliation. So there are only a handful of third party political parties in Florida. And that varies from year to year because they have to have so many voters registered to remain active, like on the active status list. Like Green Party usually stays active, Libertarian Party stays active. And then everybody else after that, it's a, you know, it's a crapshoot. You just don't know from year to year if your party's going to get bumped or not because there aren't enough people active in it. So which is another reason why a lot of people choose one of the two major parties, and part of the reason why we have maintained a two-party system, which we'll talk about in more detail when we get to political parties. You can select an ethnicity, but you don't have to. Some people like to select that because it does help with statistics, so they can go, okay, this percentage of, you know, African American Republicans are active voters, or African American Democrats are active voters, or Hispanic, what, you know, whatever. It helps the political parties, the campaigns, the candidates, the elected officials. It helps all of the people who do this work narrow down their focus and how they need to target campaign messages. So for me, I like the statistical part of it because I on the other side, I know how it helps people do their job. But a lot of people also don't want to be pigeonholed, and that's totally understandable and totally reasonable. I'm pretty pasty white, like a ghost white. I make everybody else look tan. So you know, I'm arc white. I'm not Hispanic, but there's nothing saying that you have to ever. You know, so it doesn't matter. You know, for that. You know, like it's totally up to you one way or the other. And then on this one, if you are one of these, active duty military or merchant marine, spouse or dependent of one of those, resident residing out of the US. These are things that you should check if you fall in one of these categories, because it helps where they can like set you up if you need a ballot mailed overseas or something like that. And also, like, you can stay registered here if you're stationed somewhere else. Like, this can be your permanent home of residence, and then you just update your mailing address as you move. My brother was in the Army for 17 and a half years. He actually just retired due to some medical reasons. And he kept like our physical address. Like, it wasn't my mother's home until the hurricane, which got destroyed. And then it was at our home afterwards until he was getting ready to retire. And then he would just by he I mean me, I would update it because he would not remember, update his mailing address to wherever he was stationed at, and then like ballots would just go to him that way. And so a lot of military members do that. They establish residency in one state and then they just get mail-in ballots, so they don't have to like learn. Like, some people are not stationed at places very long, and then by the time they get accustomed to a new area and those candidates and whatever, they're moving again, so people are just like, forget it, I don't want to deal with that. So, and also, like, if you're overseas somewhere, like, that way you can get the ballot. And so it's helpful to have this notated to help speed up the process when that is necessary. The spot here that says I will need assistance with voting, that's if you say you have vision impairment, say your hand shakes a lot, you have trouble filling out the ballot, or you're hard of hearing and you need visual, or you're hard of seeing and you need auditory, whatever. If you're going to need some kind of help, like, this is helpful. Now, if this isn't marked and it turns out you need assistance, you can still ask for it, and that is not a problem at all. But some people like to go ahead and mark this when they know that, okay, I'm going to need this regularly. I have Parkinson's or whatever the situation is, right? And then this spot here, I would like to be a poll worker. So I mentioned this a little bit in the course introduction video. So I was a poll worker before I got hired at the elections office, and I am now a poll worker again. And you do get paid a little bit for it. You get paid with the training. You get paid for the actual work that you do. You don't get paid a lot, but for those of you who are dual enrolled, for those of you who are young, you don't work full time, but you need a little extra pocket money here and there, you pick up side jobs. This is an awesome opportunity for you to be able to get a little extra money and for you to see the system in a like completely different angle. It's all about just helping people get in, vote, and get out. Like, not how they vote, not who they vote for, just the actual process of making the election happen. And it's a really cool thing to see if you haven't been involved with it before. You do have to be registered to vote to be a poll worker, because why would you work the polls if you don't care about voting, right? So you do have to be registered to vote. They are looking for tech savvy people. And not, I hope this does not offend anybody. It's not my intent. But in the past, a lot of poll workers have been older because they're retired. They have more time, right? They have the time to devote to that, where people who are younger, they're working full time. Like, I can't take off work and work early voting all week or whatever. But the technology has gotten to a point now where it's a much more tech savvy system. Like, used to, they would like order from a printer like so many ballots ahead of time, but then there'd be a lot that would go to waste that have to be like shredded after the election, because you don't know how many people are going to show up and vote, but you have to have enough for every registered voter. And so now, like, it's a system where it's just all like, it's a printer system. Like, okay, they confirm you're you, here's the ballot that you get, and they print it and they hand it to you, so that way they're not wasting stuff. But little things like that are difficult for some people of a certain age, not everybody. Like, my mom, for example, would struggle with that. Like, she's just not, she could pick it up if she wanted to, but she's of an age where she's like, I don't care. I don't need to know that. It's not a problem for me. So and so a lot of people are that way. So they are trying to get like a younger batch of poll workers. Not they're excluding or discriminating against older people. Anybody is welcome to be a poll worker as long as they can do the training and understand the job. But also there's the issue of like, when it's just older retired folks, what happens when they're not here anymore to be able to do the job. So they are looking for people who are quick on their feet with technology, because it's it's a smoother process for training. So if that's something you're interested in, you would fill out this form, even if you're registered to vote. You fill out the required stuff, mark, I'd like to be a poll worker, and send it in, and then follow up with them and be like, hey, I sent this in, I'm interested in being a poll worker. You can also just call the elections office and say, I'd like to be a poll worker. What do you need me to do? Because there's a little thing on the website that you do. So, and I'll go into that in a second. And then number 12 is required. You sign here, and then you got to make sure you put the date, because you can't leave it blank, because especially if it's close to a registration deadline, because then they're like, what if this wasn't signed and in before the deadline? Like, because if they get a big stack of registrations they're still processing after the deadline, they need to make sure it was filled out before the deadline, didn't get mixed in with a batch of ones that were after the deadline, if that makes sense. So the date is important. You got to put the date as well. So that is the Florida voter registration form. 1 through 7 and 12 are required. The other is optional based on your needs as an individual voter. So if, I think the one thing I forgot to put or to say to you guys, for an address change, doesn't matter if you moved across the street or next door or across the state. If you move from Miami-Dade to Bay County, you move within Bay County. You should put the last address, if you know it, where you're registered to vote. Or if you don't remember the exact address, but you know the city and the zip code, put that, because then they can search the entire statewide database and make sure they're not accidentally registering you new and leaving another registration open. So if you've changed your address, make sure you put the old one in number 9. All right, that's imperative. So so I say all that to say, if you're registered and you're active and everything's current when you do your ID lookup, great, you don't have to worry about this. If your information, you're registered but it's not current, fill this out to update your information. If you're inactive, fill this out to make yourself active. If you're at the same address and everything is right but it says inactive, fill this out to reactivate yourself, so it shows activity on your record. All right, so if you have any kind of weird situations like that, or you're not in the system at all, fill this out to get registered. A lot of people also don't think about this with their voter registration, but you know, your signature when you're, say, 16 because you pre-registered vote, it's probably not your same signature when you're 40 or 50, right? Like the odds are good it's changed. So you can also use this form to update your signature. This is also helpful for people who have had a stroke or they have some sort of illness where like their hand shakes and they can't write as well as they used to. This is great for a signature update. When I worked at the elections office, I had a gentleman come in and his mother's ballot had just been rejected from the previous election for signature not matching. And like she had signed like an X and we had like a full signature on file. So and he said that she had a stroke or something and like her hand shook, so her signature was not the same anymore. And so she just marks X for everything. I said, okay, well, that's fine. The problem is we don't have that X on file. Anybody could have gotten her ballot and filled it out and marked an X. Like, we can't verify her that way. Like, we verify that this person is who they say they are by lining up the signature because they clip it, like, and it's saved as an image in the voter record. And so he was like, oh, well, what do we do? He said, because it varies all the time. I said, well, the best way to do that, keep voter registration forms with you or pull them up online. And when there's an election, you fill out the required stuff, just the required stuff, mark that there's a signature update, help her fill out her ballot, have her sign the ballot envelope and sign the voter registration form at the exact same time, like doop, doop, because then it's going to match at the time. You bring them back together and say, this signature needs to be updated with this voter registration form before you check the ballot. And then we can match them and then it won't get rejected and then she can vote. And his attitude was, I don't have time to do that. That's an awful lot of work. Can I just take her off the rolls? Ooh, I was hot, let me tell you. And I kind of lit into him a little bit. I said, your mother, who grew you in her body, gave birth to you, raised you up to being a sufficient adult, You want to take her off the voter rolls because you're inconvenienced once every 2 years when we have an election. It takes you what, 15 minutes to help her, and then you drop it off on your way to the store or to work or whatever one day. Really? And he was like, I guess you're right. so I explained to him, I was like, I mean, really, it takes just a minute. It looks like it's a lot, but it's really not. And a lot of people have to do that, and they have to update their signature every time. But a lot of people care so much about their right to vote and they want to be involved that they're willing to do that. So if for whatever reason your signature has ever changed, or you know somebody whose signature has changed and they vote by mail, it's incredibly important to update it. Now, this is only a really big deal if you vote by mail. If you go in person, they're not checking your signature, they're checking your ID. So that's something to keep in mind. So once you have made sure that you're active or gotten yourself active in the system through updating your voter registration, then we're going to go back here to the next steps for your discussion board assignment. So now, and I will reference if you're not registered and et cetera in a minute. But so now, if you know for certain, I know I'm registered in Bay County, I know all my information's updated, I'm a super voter, like I vote every election, go ahead, go to your county supervisor elections, skip these beginning steps, handle your business, right? Like if you're a very involved voter, you know your situation. So I'm not saying that everybody's got to do this step by step. I'm not going to ask for any kind of proof, but this is to make sure you're current for upcoming elections. Because I always try to encourage people to be registered and engaged, not just registered to vote, but actually like do the thing. So once you've confirmed that, you go to your county's election, and again, for example purposes, we're going to say it's Bay County. So then you go to Bay County and it'll pull up your information, it'll pull up what elections you're eligible for, and once all the qualifying deadlines have passed for people to be able to put their name out there to be on the ballot, the elections office will generate sample ballots. The sample ballots will say, here's for sure what's going to be like on the election. Here's what's going to be on the ballot. And you can choose whatever race you're interested in and do research on that. So let's go through the Bay County Supervisor of Elections website. I hope I'm not like wasting y'all's time by constantly like resharing. Y'all are probably like, we can still see it. I just want to be really sure that like everything's working. So, all right. So say you're registered in Bay County and you're at their election site, right? So you can go to current elections and you'll see here's what's coming up for election. Here's the primary. Here are all the offices that are coming up. Now, a lot of you would say, well, can't I just go to that and pick somebody? Yes, but I want you to do it the other way to make sure that your information is correct for registration if you're registered. And so you can see who your people are, because some of these are across the board, but some of them are for specific areas like county commissioners. Depends on the district that you're in as to which county commissioner you vote for. Same with school board and stuff like that. So that way you know who your people are. So this is to like help make you a more informed voter. Now, obviously, because I don't know your birthdays, I don't have like that kind of information. Technically, I have no way to know if you chose school member district 2 that you live in school member district 2. But I would hope that you would still take the time to check your information, because it really does just take a second to put your information in and see if you're registered and to make sure you're current. So I hope that you do take the time to actually do that. But if you're like, listen, lady, I'm just trying to get through this assignment, you can go to current elections, and this is in different places based on the county that you live in. Like if you live in Leon County, like it's like each website is built a little differently, right? So anyways, you can go to the re-election and you can see here qualifying period ends June 17th. So that's this week. Okay. So judicial and state candidates is already passed in April. But for all of the county ones, it ends this coming Friday. So even if you wanted to wait until qualifying was over so you could see who the candidates were, because what if, say, US Senator, there's no opposition, and then you choose them, and now you have no candidates to write about. So because if there's no opposition, the person just gets reelected. So I would wait, if I were you, unless you're going to do a judicial or state candidate. You would already know that, right? Because their qualifying ended at the end of April. But if you wanted to do school board, wait till after the 17th when qualifying ends, and it'll be noon on June 17th. Then you can check and say, okay, now it's done. These are for sure the people. So if you want to get a jump start, then choose one of the judicial spots or one of the state positions, like chief financial officer, attorney general, commissioner of agriculture, like all of those, right? Like everything above county commissioner, like these are all local, and that ends this Friday. All of these ended in April. So if you wanted to get a jump start on this week, then I would suggest choosing from the highlighted list I just gave you. So once that qualifying is over, then they're going to start making the vote by mail ballots because they start mailing those out. So here you see now UACAVA is like the abbreviation. That's for people overseas. So they will start mailing them no later than July 9th. They'll probably get them out that Friday on the 8th, so they're not having to come in on Saturday. And then people in the States, like me, I'm set up for a ballot. Mine will go out sometime after July 14th. So, and it's local mail. It'll go to Pensacola, and then it'll come back. I'll have it either Saturday or that Monday, right? The registration deadline to be registered to vote or to have your political party for that particular primary, Monday, July 25th. You have until the end of business on the 25th to update your registration. So which is kind of screwy, right? Because vote by mail starts earlier, but they have to get them out in time. So here's a fun like wrench in the thing. Okay, say I decide I want to change my political party. I already get my absentee ballot, and I'm like, crap, I didn't realize I was still that party, or oh, I meant to change. Registration deadline doesn't end until the 25th. I could change it and ask them for another ballot for the new party, as long as it's on or before the 25th. And some people do that. So, and you can do that. You can get up to like 3 ballots issued to you if you make a mistake. So that's not a problem. And the last day to have a ballot requested to be mailed, Saturday, August 13th, because early voting starts right around then. So, and then you see early voting times, hours, the actual election day, and then we've got those details for the general election. So I show you all that so you know as a voter what you need to do and by when. So this is a good spot. I can post this election up or this particular link up for you guys on Canvas. That's not a problem. And it'd probably be helpful for you guys to reference this. So I will put that up for you guys. So once you've verified your registration and or updated your registration, you can choose the office that you want to do. Okay, so let's go back to the discussion board assignment. So we are here. Once you've confirmed all that, you can select current elections. What will be on your ballot varies based on your registered political party, because again, closed primary state. So that's important to realize. Like if you look at candidates and you're like, why isn't that candidate showing up like on my sample ballot once they have the sample ballots, which they can get ready relatively quickly after this Friday. Well, it's because they're not of your political party. So once you've done all of that verification process, you'll be able to select one of those positions that you would have the opportunity to vote for in theory based on your party's primary. So you're going to choose U.S. Senate, agriculture, financial officer, school board, county commission, whatever race floats your boat, tickles your fancy. You're going to research what that position does. If you're looking up U.S. Senator, start out with Google, right? Like Google U.S. Senators. What does a U.S. Senator do? You're going to talk about that in your essay, okay? So each state has 2 senators. So there are 100 senators total. Come hell or high water, doesn't matter how many citizens we have or whatever. Every state gets 2 senators, U.S. senators. So you could always look up Florida U.S. senators. See what they currently focus on too. What do they target based on our needs as a state? Like, you could always include that if you wanted to. You don't have to, but you can, right? Like, to make it more personal, make it your own. Because you got to think, how many of y'all are going to choose, say, U.S. Senator or agriculture or whatever? You're going to write some of the same stuff, right? Like you're going to see that in the discussion boards, like, oh yeah, I found that in my research too, right? So, like, you know, if you want to find a way to like stand out, make it your own, whatever, you know, you can get creative with giving examples too. You know, like, oh, for example, like one of our former U.S. senators was an astronaut before he went into politics. Fun fact, that's true. One of our current U.S. senators used to be our governor. Also true, right? So you can do that to like kind of make it your own. So you write about the position first. Then I want you to list who the candidates are who are like going to be on your ballot for the primary. If you're a Republican, who are the Republicans? If you're a Democrat, who are the Democrats? And kind of compare and talk about like, okay, well, this person's platform is this. This is what they're running on. And I want you to pay attention to what they're running on. I live in Springfield, which is a very small little city in Bay County, for those of you who aren't familiar with the area. Several years ago, somebody ran for the city commission seat. Now, a city commissioner does things like making sure roads are paved. They get the complaints if their trash hasn't been picked up in a couple of weeks. They deal with, hey, this red light's not working in my area, right? And you're my city commissioner in my particular district. What are we going to do about this? That stop sign has been down for a while. Like, those are the kinds of things that the city commissioners make things like run smoothly. All right. And then they help like the mayor with like budgeting and hiring of people in the offices and stuff. But this guy ran his whole platform on Second Amendment rights. He was a gun advocate, and he'll make sure that nobody stomps on our Second Amendment rights. And I emailed him and I was like, dude, what are you running on that you could actually do anything about? Like, this is not even in your purview. Like, this isn't something that you would even have the authority to even deal with. Like, the Second Amendment's way above your pay grade. Like, that has absolutely nothing to do with your job. So if you got this job, what would you do as my city commissioner? And he could not give me any specifics. And I even, like, you know, I put on my campaign hat and walked him through some things that would help his campaign. He completely ignored me, stuck to his guns, as it were, and he lost because it was very apparent that he wasn't qualified. He was just running because he wanted the job, because, you know, you get paid to be city commissioner, and, you know, he wanted a little notch in his belt, but you're not qualified to do the job if you don't know what the job is, right? So pay attention to the people who are running in the seat you choose and make sure that their platforms match the job description, right? We've all applied to jobs. We have all looked at a job requirement and gone, none of my qualifications match this. I would not get hired in a million years, right? Like, it's the same thing. They're just applying for a job. So make sure that you research the position first so you know what the job is supposed to entail. Then look at what they're running on and see if it makes a lick of sense, because you will find that it doesn't necessarily for some people. And the reason why that guy used that was because this is a conservative area. People are about some guns here. And so he thought it would throw some votes his way and hope that people were ignorant enough to not see through the fact that he did not have a clue as to what he would do when he got in the office. But it didn't work. People who are in Springfield have lived in Springfield for generations, and like they see through that crap. So so that is important to think about when you're doing your research, and put that in your essay. Be like, okay, candidate A, like, here's his platform. Candidate B, here's her platform. Candidate C, this is their platform. Feel free to compare them, like compare them as candidates. Feel free to tear things apart that, like, this has absolutely nothing to do with their job. Doesn't make any sense why they're even talking about it. Why are they talking? Like, question it. Like put your thinking cap on and like really go to town on them. Like, don't hold back. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. Ain't none of them my friends. So like, feel free to like dive in, right? Like, think about it in terms of like you're a journalist and you're trying to get the scoop, right? One, this will help you get a better idea, at least at that particular position, who you want to vote for come August. So you've done a little preemptive homework as a voter. When you do your responses to your classmates, they will have done some research for you so you can compare some of the other positions. And you're going to want to read through at least several to decide who you want to respond to, right? So this will all help you guys be prepared to vote in the primary election in August if you're old enough to vote. And even if you aren't, this will help you learn what you need to do to be an informed voter. Like, it's not just enough to be like, oh, I like that guy, he seems nice, right? Like, you need to know what they're running for and if they're qualified to do that job. Think of yourself as the hiring manager for that position, right? Are they qualified? Like, it's that simple. Like, does it make sense? What they're running on, does that make sense? Their party platform, their campaign platform rather, and then their previous experience, which you can look up. Like, a lot of candidates are going to have websites. A lot of candidates are going to have blurbs on the supervisor of elections website about what they're running on. Not everybody takes advantage of that. They're dumb. They should, because a lot of people are lazy and they're not going to go to like 10 different websites. They like what they can see all in one place because people don't want to take the time to do all of that. So you can look at all of those avenues to get a well-rounded view. And once you feel comfortable and have your head around the information, you can start fleshing out an essay about it, right? So, and just like a typical essay, like introduction, like, I chose this position in this essay, you know, like hopefully a little less rudimentary than that, but you know, like, I'm going to be comparing candidates A, B, and C, and you know, we'll contrast and compare, whatever. And then second paragraph is, so in the position of U.S. Senator, you do X, right? Like, here's what a U.S. Senator does. Here's what a city commissioner does for that particular city. And that's also important to think about. Like, if, say, you were doing a city race, which you're not going to see any cities on this ballot because those are separate elections. But say it was like a city position, like, okay, well, city commissioner in one county or in one city might have different roles, like, put on them than in another city, depending on the area. Like, Parker's a very small city. They probably take on a lot more than in like Panama City, where there are more people, so it can be doled out more, right? So that's important to think about as well. And then you talk about the candidates, compare and contrast, break it up however you want to. It doesn't have to be like just 5 paragraphs. Like, if you need more than 5 paragraphs, you know, like, you think about the old school essay format, they say introduction, conclusion, 3 paragraph body, but you can have more than that. That's not a problem. And I like, when I put the rubric, I'll put like minimums. Like, I expect like at least a minimum of, you know, 500 words, which sounds like a lot, but you will get there very quickly because there'll be enough material. And if there's not enough material, you haven't done enough research. So, but in the rubric that I'll put up this week, I'll put all of those details out. So you write about the position, then you compare and contrast the candidates. You'll do it in essay format. You'll type it up in Word. I'll put all those details, Times New Roman, double space, you know, whatever. And then when you go into the discussion board that I've created, which you should see under the modules, like near the top, there's a discussion board section. Like you can go in and you'll see like you hit reply and then there's an attachment and like you put your attachment. I want you to not just type it in the discussion board, but I want you to actually type it up in Word so you have the formatting, you have the auto spell correct, the grammar correct, all of that before you attach it. All right. Like think of like you're at the next level out now. Like if this is your first college class, like you got to think on the next level. Like I will dock if I see a whole lot of grammatical errors, if I see a whole lot of like, wow, they don't know when to end a sentence. They don't know where to put a period or a semicolon or a comma or like really that's not the right there, you know, like so things that you should already know before you're in a college class, right? Like so those sort of things like you will like I pay attention to. Like I'm looking at the content and like the meat of the thing, but the bones have to make sense too. So so I'll have that rubric put up in a couple of days, within the next few days. So so that's kind of the gist of this. And then you'll do, so you'll have that due by module 4 on July 10th. And then you'll read your classmates. And then you'll pick 3 of those classmates to do responses to. And that is going to have a minimum of 250 words, maybe a little less. I have to think about it. I was going to say per response. It's like, dang, that's like longer than the minimum for the actual assignment. So probably not. Give me a day or so to like figure out the math on how long the response is, because it's not worth as much either. So scratch the 250, ignore that altogether. So maybe like 150 or 200 or so. I haven't decided, but we'll see. So, but it needs to be thoughtful and thorough, not just like, hey, great job, buddy, right? Like it, like you need to put some thought-provoking responses to it, like, oh, I found that really interesting, that's odd that like they talked about that and that has nothing to do with that position. Like really, I want to know that you actually read their response and paid attention, right? Not just like, oh, that's really insightful. Like that's not going to cut it. You won't get credit for a response that way, okay? And again, I'll have a response, like I'll have a rubric for the initial assignment, and I'll also have another rubric for the responses, so you're not flying blind. Like I would never do that. So that way you can go down the rubric and check it off, and if you know you've hit all of the points, then you know you're good and you're going to have a good grade. Okay, so I believe I have touched on everything for this assignment. If I think of anything specific, I will like add a note somewhere. I'll send you guys an email or something, or I'll put a little note under the assignment, or I'll add it or whatever. I'll get the rubric up this week. Feel free to start looking at the positions, because like for the state and judicial, since we know that qualifying's over, we would be able to find out who the candidates are, right? So you can go to your supervisor of elections, just like we looked up upcoming elections. You can go to candidates and committees and see who is coming up. That just take us back? Yes, that's not what I needed. So give me just a second. Let me see current candidates. I think that's where we need to be. Okay, come on. Okay, so you go under candidates and committees, and then you go to current candidates and finances. So you do the drop down here, you can see past elections. But so it looks like here we've already got some people trying to qualify in 2 years. That's crazy. So I mean, not really. Think that's how early stuff starts in politics, but it's already selected on where you need to be, right? So this shows the county level stuff. You can see here, Bay County Judge Group 3, nobody ran against them. So they're unopposed. We've got 2 candidates for School Board District 2 so far. Depends on how they file, or how the deadline works by the end of the week. And then all of these seats have no opposition right now. So when you're looking at the list of possible, if you're waiting for a county, I wouldn't waste your time doing too much research on these, because unless somebody comes out of the woodwork, these are not going to be on the ballot because they're going to automatically get the seats. Same with these county commission seats. Right now, nobody's run against them. So the only one that we're waiting to find out on as of right now for Friday is School Board District 2. Now, somebody could come and write a check and get all the paperwork in by Friday in theory, but odds are that's not going to happen. So this would be the only county one. And then we would have to go to the state to see the federal judges in the state positions, which we can do real quick. So I want to make sure to show you guys, and I'll put all of these links like all together in the assignment, so you guys aren't going, shoot, where do I find that? You know, so okay, so let's see, should be here, I believe. Candidates, 2022 election. Yeah, we don't care about, we're not doing special election, we're just doing the regular 2022. So US Senator, look at how many people are running right now. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Democrats, and we have 1, 2, 3 Republicans, which is, let me see, I'm interested. And right now, where's the other one? No, 2 Republicans. Where did I see a third one? Just 2. No, 3 Republicans. None of them are current senators, which I find really interesting, because our current US senators are both Republicans. So that makes you wonder, okay, so are they running for something else? Because there are not term limits. So I don't know what's happening here, but there's some new political drama I feel like I need to do some research on. I don't know what's going on. There's several in no party affiliations. We've got 1, 2, 3 of those. Independent Party of Florida, Libertarian Party of Florida. This is a write-in candidate. Write-ins don't really get very far. We got a couple of those. U.S. Representative. So our area is Neil Dunn. So no Democrats are running against him. He's our incumbent. He's our current person. That's what incumbent is. And then there are 2 no party affiliations running against him. So there's some people in that race. A lot of different positions for that. Governor, here we go. This is going to be a very, very interesting race. So much is going to happen. Several Democrats. There are 2 standout Democrats right now that are kind of like leading the charge right now. And that is Charlie Crist and oh my God, I'm totally blanking. Where's Nikki Fried? She's our current agricultural commissioner. Charlie Crist has been our governor already in the past, and they're kind of like the 2 that are kind of coming out from the Democratic Party, like they're like the lead, like they're the 2 that people are paying attention to. Ron DeSantis is, of course, our current Republican governor, and it looks like there's 2 Republicans running against him, so that's kind of interesting. And then we've got some no party affiliation folks, Green Party, write-in, so that'll be a contested election for sure. We have Attorney General, 3 Democrats, and then Ashley Moody, who's our Republican incumbent. Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Patronis, he is our current incumbent, 2 Democrats and a no party affiliation running against him. Commissioner of Agriculture, we've got 1, 2, 3 of them, 4 Republicans running. So there'll definitely be a primary if you're a Democrat, and there'll be a primary if you're a Republican. So all of these right now, regardless of which of the 2 major parties you are, you will have stuff on your ballot. And if you're no party affiliation, looks like you're going to have a lot too, which is not typical. State attorney, we see we've got some of that. Looks like public defender was unopposed. She keeps her spot. And then state senator, depending on what area you're in. I think, yeah, we are here. We're 2, which is George Gaynor and Jay Trumbull. So we've got 3 Republicans running and then 1 Democrat. So that means that this Democrat automatically goes on to the general to face whichever of these Republicans make it to the general election. So that'll be interesting to see how that ends up working. State representatives, I forget which district we are. Let me see if a name sticks out at me. Don't see. I'm probably just like overlooking it, but anyways, it's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, it matters. Obviously, it matters, but I don't want to just drag it out while I try and find a name. Supreme Court justices, all justices at that level run as nonpartisan. That's what NOP stands for. Personally, they may have a political party, but it doesn't go onto the ballot because judges are supposed to be nonpartisan. And we'll talk about that in a lot more detail when we get to the judges chapter. And the District Court of Appeals, looks like there's a lot for that. Circuit judge, holy moly at the people. Okay, that's not us, not us, not us, not us. Okay, and none of these at the bottom are us. However, as you can see, there's a ton of options. Hopefully, did I share this right? I'm sure it's sharing, hopefully. So there are a bunch of options for judicial and state level positions. So unless you're like really, really, really excited about the school board district 2 for Bay County, I would say go ahead and pick somebody at the state level, because these people have already qualified. These are the people who are going to be on the ballot. And if you're registered and you know what your political party affiliation is, you can deduce who's going to be on your ballot, whether it's no party affiliation folks, whether it's Democrats, whether it's Republicans, it doesn't matter. You will know who's going to be on your ballot based on this list, and you can, go ahead and figure out what you need to figure out as to who your people are going to be. So that is incredibly helpful, right? So, and you can even narrow it down, like if say you're in Bay County, just do Bay County, and then that'll help you shorten a little bit. Like it'll just give you your circuit judge, your district court of appeals, like, so it takes out all the people that aren't going to be on your ballot, right? Or if you're in Leon County, say you're in Tallahassee and you're taking classes here or whatever, like you can do Leon, and it'll do the same thing. It'll show you your information, right? So regardless of like where you are in Florida, like you can go ahead and figure it out. So unless you're super interested in one of the school board seats, like you could go ahead and pick your people like now, like whatever seat like holds your fancy. Or if there's say there's a candidate, like you're a big fan of Ron DeSantis, or you're a big fan of Charlie Crist or Nikki Fried or of Jay Trumbull or whatever, right? Like if there's somebody in particular that you're interested in, choose that race, like, and then that way you get a little more information out of it. So you could actually, in theory, go ahead and like get started on that and get the ball rolling. And I'll post this list as well, so that way you don't have to like try and hunt it down again. But hopefully this detailed video has clarified for some of you what's up. Now, for those of you who are not registered to vote, as an individual, a resident, a voter, a citizen, I implore you to consider registering to vote. I really, 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 really hope that you consider that. Even if it's not right this second, even if, I whittle you down throughout the semester, I hope that you consider registering to vote and being part of the political process, because it's so vitally important and imperative to the success of our society to be engaged, informed, educated, involved citizens on all levels, and that includes voting. So I really do hope that you consider registering. If you live in another state, you can either follow this process. Actually, I was going to say you can pick somebody in your own state, but that makes no sense. If most of you live in Florida, which I'm going on the assumption that you do, it will confuse everybody if they have no idea who you're talking about. So if you live outside of Florida, You can do the same sort of process for your own personal whatever for registering to vote, and for voting, so you can be an informed voter of your state. But I asked for you to choose somebody with the Florida primary, just so it makes sense as people are reading and doing responses. So there's like a flow of conversation about similar people and topics. So if you live outside of the state, just choose somebody in the state, but you can do this exact same sort of process for your own state purposes for your own voting education. If you are a dual enrolled student, if you are not 18 and therefore can't actually be registered to vote, but I believe most of you are at least 16. I have had a few dual enrolled students who are 15. If you're 15, you can't pre-register. If you're 16, you can. I implore you to register to vote. If somebody in your household, like your parent, your grandparent, whoever, is already registered to vote, you can do the same process with their information to at least get like the right information, right? Like to see the right county and that kind of thing. Or you can just like choose somebody, from the list of people. That's fine too, if you already have like political leanings one way or the other and you're interested, or whatever. Like you don't even have to choose your own political leanings. But I gave that as an example because that's what you would see on your own primary. So it gives you an idea of what you would need to do to be an informed voter when you go to vote, because that's what would be in front of you, right? Like if you're a registered Democrat, you're not going to see a Republican on the ballot. If you're a registered Republican, you're not going to see a Democrat or a Green Party person. You're only going to see the Republicans in the primary. So that's why I suggested to see, okay, what does your registration say? Is that accurate? Is that the party you want to be? And go from there. So this is also like an exercise in helping you prepare for the primary election coming up in just a few months. So so if you're not registered to vote, you can always just choose someone or pretend like you are and go through all the same sort of steps to figure out like, okay, these are the people that would be in my area, or like if I were registered, I'd probably go this route with parties. Now, if you know nothing about American government, it's probably a little early for you to feel a particular way about a party, right? And you might just know like what your friends and family choose. So that might make it a little difficult, and that's understandable. There's some online like polls that I usually post later on in the semester that you can kind of see like where you align based on answering questions about certain issues. And it helps give you an idea if you're not sure. I usually post that later, but I can post it now to help those of you who really have no loyalty one way or the other to a party. And that might give you an idea of like kind of where your gut instincts are. So I'll post that as well. I'll get that done tomorrow sometime. I'll find that link and get that posted up early, so that way you can do that as well. So hopefully all of this has been helpful and hasn't confused you. I hope I haven't like gone too far in the weeds where you are more confused than you were before. Hopefully this has provided clarification and not confusion. So if you have any questions, like after having reviewed this video and gone back and read stuff and that sort of thing, feel free to email me. If you need to like talk it through verbally, we can always schedule a Zoom call, like whatever you need to do. Like I want you to succeed. That's my biggest goal. Like my goal is always for all of my students to succeed and pass. I'm not here to fail anybody. I'm here to make sure that you understand the material. And I try to design my class in a way that you walk away with information that you're going to hold on to, not just stuff to pass a test, and for real world applications, which is what this project is supposed to do. So I'm hoping that that gets achieved. So if you have any questions, if you need any other clarification, if something makes absolutely no sense, whatever you might need, I am here. That's what I'm here for. So please, please, please let me know. Absolutely don't hesitate to reach out to me about this or anything else for the semester. So I hope you learned some things from this, at least about voter registration, if nothing else, or how a little bit of the elections process works. Consider being a poll worker. If you want the contact information for that, like I can give you the information directly to the person that signs everybody up at the elections office. We would love to have you. And I hope you have a good evening or day, depending on when you're watching this. And we'll talk soon. So thank you so much and have a good night.